Hello, everyone. This is the Free American Press with your host, Alexander Horat. Today, we're going to be having a very special guest on the show, and that is Andy Schectman, the president of Miles Franklin. But before we get into it, if you could please subscribe to the channel and leave a like on this video, that would be really appreciated. Hello, Andy. Thank you for being on the show.
Great to be here again, Alex. Good to see you, buddy.
Yeah, good to see you too. So, I would like to share the screen with you so you can see this article right here. So, here it is. Basically, the judge blocked the FBI for keeping, gold and silver and some cash that they seized in a Beverly Hills raid. So basically, what happened, from what I saw, is that uh, there was a few of these safe deposit boxes that were involved in some possibly money laundering. But then they decided, the FBI, to seize all 369 safe deposit boxes at this place in Beverly Hills, which was pretty amazing. It's basically it's called civil asset forfeiture, uh, basically nullifying our rights to innocent until proven guilty. This is guilty until proven innocent because the judge, days later or whatever time, basically said, "Oh, you can have your gold and silver back, but you had to prove yourself innocent." So I want to see what you think about this, Andy. And yeah.
I think it's frightening as hell, Alex. I think that it just follows part and parcel to a lot of the other frightening things that are happening in this country that go against the Constitution, go against the Bill of Rights, go against everything that this country was founded upon, shaking it to its core. To the point, you do not store precious metals in those private facilities. You do not store precious metals in bank safe deposit boxes. Over my shoulder, I guess it's my right shoulder, I don't know how it looks on your end, but those are our safe deposit boxes in Canada within a Brinks facility, fully insured. I've been in a conference all weekend, a virtual conference, so I had that banner up, but we have a worldwide exclusive with Brinks on safe deposit boxes within a military grade, fully insured Brinks facility in Toronto and Vancouver. That's a whole different story than being in a private safe deposit box facility in Beverly Hills that undoubtedly doesn't carry insurance, and with the only stipulation of no narcotics, no weapons. That just invites trouble. At a precious metals depository like the one over my shoulder, it is only gold, silver, and platinum, and nothing else. And the vetting is pretty strong. The know your client and that kind of stuff. So that doesn't happen. And if you're in a facility like ours, there is no reporting. It's fully insured and it's safe within a facility that isn't going to attract money laundering and nefarious activities. Bottom line is, yeah, in and of itself, government overreach, having to prove guilty before innocent is terrifying. And it is completely contrary to everything this country stands for. But you don't store your metals in those kinds of places, Alex, period. And I've been saying that for as long as I can remember. You just don't do that. You would be better off digging a hole in the backyard and becoming a midnight gardener than putting it in a place like that.
Oh, yeah. So, why do you think the FBI is doing this, and do you think they're going to be continuing to do stuff like this in the future?
Geez, I would really like to hope not. The FBI has certainly been given, I guess you could say, somewhat of a bad reputation over the last few years. And if half of the allegations that are true regarding spying on the presidency and that kind of stuff, that we need to rehash that. But yeah, that would be horrible. We would like to think that the FBI stands for integrity and stands for what this country is all about. We would really like to think that we are not being pitted against the Federal Bureau of Investigation in terms of having to prove our innocence. If you're pulled over and happen to have $5,000 in your car and it gets taken from you just for speeding, and you have to prove how you got it, those kinds of things, that isn't what this country is all about. Nor is storing in a very legitimate manner valuables in a facility and having to retrieve them from the FBI and prove that you're not a criminal. This is not what this country is all about. But many of the things that we've witnessed over the last year and a half, in particular, the government's reaction to the lockdown, COVID, has really shocked me. And so am I qualified to comment on, will the FBI continue to do this? Probably not. Would I be surprised if they did? Probably not. Would I be surprised if the whole FBI was blown up? And I don't mean in a literal sense. I mean in terms of an investigation that found widespread corruption. No, I wouldn't. In fact, without naming names, I have two very significant clients who had worked for the FBI for a very long time. And I talk with them. One of them is a friend, and I talk with him a lot. And he, with disdain, looks at the FBI now from when he was there 15 years ago. Says it's not the same place. Left around 15 years ago because it was changing then. You talk to some of the ex-FBI agents and they will echo this. Are we going down a bad rabbit hole with this kind of action and behavior out of the FBI? Well, if any of it's true, absolutely. Let's just hope it's not true. What can we do to avoid it? Stay out of those kinds of places. Don't store your valuables in a bank safe deposit box or a private institution like that. If you're going to store metals, pay the money to have it stored in a third-party facility like Brinks, like Loomis, like the Dakota Depository, like legitimate third-party storage facilities that only allow you to store precious metals and nothing else, and fully insure them through companies like Lloyd's of London. That is the best way to store it if you don't feel comfortable hiding them under your own roof. And maybe on a future interview, you and I can talk about storage solutions, where you can hide them, how you can hide them, where you can put them. But a place like our Brinks program is as good as it gets. We have exclusives from Brinks that no one else in North America has been granted in safe deposit boxes. And also, those boxes are within inside of a military grade, fully insured Brinks facility in Toronto or Vancouver, not in a bank, not in a strip mall, not 24-hour access. It's a whole different facility, whole different ball of wax. And you know, we also have fixed rate storage, Alex, where you're paying based upon the number of ounces that you store, not the value that they pertain. That's an exclusive for us. We're the only ones in the country that offer that. So there are good ways to store your metal, whether it be at home or in a third-party facility. Just stay out of places like that. And you just want to stay away from any type of facility where it lends itself to that type of a problem. And those private facilities certainly do, when the only stipulation they put on what can't be in there is typically narcotics or weapons.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of changes going across the world and the United States, and they don't seem for the better. So I wanted to talk to you also about another really big thing that was going on, and that is the rioting in South Africa. There's been a lot of different news, going on, in South Africa, basically with all the rioting that's going on. So how do you think this will affect the worldwide economy? We saw them shut down one of the biggest oil refineries they have. Actually, it cuts 1/3 of their oil away. I think that's a pretty bad thing that's going on. People are having a hard time finding food and a lot of other things. So do you think this will really affect the rest of the world? And do you think they're going to be, shutting down, possibly gold mines as well, since they shut down their oil refinery?
A geopolitical risk is always a big risk involved in buying exploration and natural resource stocks, whether it be oil, gas, or precious metals or what have you. That's always the biggest risk. And that's one of the reasons when I buy mining shares, I typically focus on areas that are much better from a geopolitical aspect. North America in particular, Canada, US is always going to be a good place. And when you have those types of issues where you have not only government problems, but also social unrest problems, yeah, absolutely. But this is a trend that I don't like to see, that you're seeing it all over. It started in Minneapolis a year and a half ago. You're seeing it in Haiti, you're seeing it in Cuba, here in Africa. They all are based upon, well, not in Minneapolis anyway, but in many parts of the world, similar themes. Countries that have destroyed the value of their currency. You have supply chain problems. You have people having a hard time just getting basic necessities, food and medicine. And in Cuba, they have a vaccine for corona, but don't have enough needles to deploy it. And they don't have fuel in Africa. They don't have food. They're basic necessities. And as Gerald Celente often says, that when people lose it, when the people lose everything, they lose it. And that's what you're seeing. You're seeing people losing it. And it's a frightening, sad thing. And I think, quite frankly, if I had to guess, it will only get worse before it gets better. I think that there are no easy ways out of the holes that have been dug. Unfortunately, here in the US, they've chosen the printing press over austerity. Can you imagine what it would look like here, Alex, without welfare checks or food stamps or any entitlements whatsoever? What if the federal government hadn't given the stimulus to the economy that they had and to the people over the past year and a half? What if no one got those extra checks? What if there were no welfare checks, or excuse me, no unemployment checks? Those entitlements are, eviscerating the value of the dollar, really, right in front of us, where our national debt is now in excess of, well, when you talk funded and unfunded liabilities, in excess of $140 trillion. A trillion seconds ago was 31,688 years ago. The currency is being destroyed. We look at a CPI number that comes out at 5%. They call it transitory. Janet Yellen is saying, well, inflation is going to be here for the rest of the year. What do they know? What do they know about transitory? What do they know about a CPI that doesn't take into account food and fuel? Money creation is up 25% year over year. That is a better definition of inflation, not prices calculated by a phony CPI. Prices are a symptom of inflation. Inflation is an increase in the money supply. And that's what we're seeing. And you're seeing that all over the world, and the effects that it is having, or they are having, and in particular, the supply chain inflation, the supply chain problems that are causing price inflation are having ramifications all around the globe. And you're going to see it manifest, especially if it surrounds basic necessities like what's happening in Africa, in much more rioting and looting and social disorder. So yeah, it's a frightening thing, but this is why I own precious metals, not to get wealthy. It's not an investment. It's wealth in times of great uncertainty. Gold and silver have outlived 2 world wars, German hyperinflation, the Great Depression, every pandemic, and have been wealth for over 5,000 years through all sorts of unrest, through all sorts of turmoil. And, to say the United States isn't immune to turmoil is naive. I come from a place in Minneapolis where I don't recognize it anymore. I left Minneapolis to come to Florida because of all of that unrest, where the 3rd precinct was burned down on national TV, where the city that I was so proud to grow up in and to live in and to raise a family in was burned, literally burned to the ground. Many buildings and restaurants and pharmacies and grocery stores and Target stores literally burned and looted. And here we are in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where Little House on the Prairie was filmed. We're not talking about a 3rd world country like Haiti or Cuba or sub-Saharan Africa. We're talking about Minneapolis. And go look what's happening in Oregon. I mean, all around the United States, there are problems that are only being exacerbated by a currency that's being eviscerated. And I think this will get worse before it gets better. And this is why we own gold and silver. It's not to get wealthy. It's to protect and preserve against these great times of uncertainty and turmoil.
Yeah, I definitely don't trust the United States government anymore at all with all the stuff, like you said, they let Minneapolis burn. They're so much big government overreach. Basically, it's like Ronald Reagan said, we're the government and we're here to help. Like the government's never here to help. You think you're getting something for free, but you really aren't, whether it comes from welfare or anything else, unfortunately. So I have to, it's pretty too bad. So you were talking about how,
Alex, let me just say one other thing. I was talking to a really good friend the other day, a guy that is really very successful. If he's listening, he'll know who he is. He made some amazing business developments and decisions when he was a very young man and sold for an awful lot of money, a business that he built. And he's talking to me for the first time ever about gold. And he asked me a question. He said, Andy, how high do you think gold and silver will go before it gets over? And much to what this conversation has been about, I answered, I wasn't sure where the bull market in metals would end, or where the bear market in dollars would ultimately end. But that maybe the better question to be asked is, how bad can things get? And that's why owning gold and silver has never been more important. Look, for people out there, it's important to understand that gold and silver are pure wealth, and they're money that has no counterparty liability. And history has shown us that all, with a capital ALL, paper money loses value until it finally becomes worthless. And I think those who, I don't know if bad mouthing is the wrong thing to say, but bad mouth gold, they just don't seem capable of understanding this, or that gold has outlasted every fiat currency that has ever been. And you know what they say, Alex, those who don't know history are doomed to repeat its mistakes. And those who save in dollars, in my opinion, are destined to go broke. So this is why we own precious metals. And when you see turmoil around the world exacerbating and more of it, it was just Cuba. And before that, it was Haiti. And now it's Africa. And before that was Minneapolis. Where does it end? Don't know. But this is why I personally own gold and silver.
yeah, basically, if we look back in the history books, we're doing the same thing the Roman Empire did. We're doing bread and circuses just to keep the people, happy enough. So there's no rebellion in the United States or anywhere else. And then we all know what happened. The barbarians sacked Rome and they stole, everything they could, which was really a shame. So basically, the biggest thing I have, to tell everyone, is basically just don't take anything from the government, because if you do, they start to begin to own you, unfortunately. And that's kind of the plan. They want you to be like, they say you're entitled and all this stuff, but they just really want to get more and more control over you, over your life. And the way they do that is if you take, the free stuff. It's just really too bad. And you were talking a little bit, Andy, how your everything that happened in Minneapolis. Could you tell the viewers a little bit what happened over there and how you prepared and survived everything that went on over there?
Well, I stayed away from the trouble. I was only 20 minutes away, if that. Um, Everyone sat and had a front row seat to what had happened there. But the rioting, the looting of their own inner city establishments. I have a motorcycle, and I went to pick it up after this happened. It was in the shop in this neighborhood, not too far away. I thought it might get destroyed in the rioting. It was just a few blocks away. And after the National Guard had been deployed, I drove home on the motorcycle, went and picked it up, and drove down Lyndale Avenue in Minneapolis, and it was horrifying. This is an inner city area called Uptown. It's not downtown; it's in between. But for miles, every single store was boarded up, graffiti, or burnt down. All of their grocery stores. And if you live in this area and do not have transportation, you are screwed. Because where are you going to go get groceries now? Where are you going to go to the pharmacy? It was very sad and horrific that this could happen in a city that I felt so safe and never locked my doors growing up. Got to the point where I was sleeping with an AR-15 under my nightstand. I probably should be careful how I say that, but owning a precious metals company in a town where the police were defunded and weren't rushing to the scene when someone's window broke at 3 a.m. I wasn't going to let my family's safety be held in the hands of anyone else but myself. And it got tiring. I just got tired of it. And so I left. And I voted with my feet, but a lot of people don't have the ability to do so. A lot of people are stuck, and I feel for them. I guess one of the things that working a long time and having a little bit of success enables you is the ability to pick up and leave if you have to. But you know, I guess I look at this as being much more widespread than people think, because if I had to guess, Alex, in this country, massive inflation is going to be the byproduct of the ultimate dollar devaluation and a massive destruction of people's wealth, unless you own gold and silver. And the bottom line is that gold and silver will go higher in response to a lower dollar and the inflation, which the Fed has no choice rather, but to create. And that's really the scary part about it, is there is no way out of it any longer. If they stop inflating, if they stop adding money into the system, everything collapses. And it's like a balloon with a little hole in it, and you stop blowing air, it just collapses. Interest rates would spike, the dollar would tank. You know, I think if they continue to do it, it's a playbook right out of Weimar Republic. And you continue to print and buy the back end of the bond market. Now, this will be a little bit more econ speak, but look, in the past month, that the 10-year treasury has fallen, the yield has fallen from 1.75 to 1.2. That's over 50 basis points. That's a massive move in the bond market. But what that says to the traders is that, well, the bond market, which is the more sophisticated of all the markets, does not believe that inflation is real, that it's transitory. And I would say, who in the right mind would buy a treasury paying 1.2% when you have, by their own faulty CPI numbers, which are crap, over 5% transitory inflation? In other words, you're getting paid 1.2%, but inflation is eating 5% of the value of your dollar. So you're guaranteed to lose 3.8% compounded year over year. Who's dumb enough to do that? Nobody but the Fed. So the Fed buys the back end of the bond market, drives interest rates lower, keeps the bond market elevated, creates the wealth effect, keeps people being able to buy homes, and stock market levied because interest rates are so low, people are forced into speculation. There are no free markets anymore, just manipulations and illusions. And so this is why I own precious metals, because it's 6,000 years worth of history behind it. We have dug ourselves as a society. We're the largest debtors nation in the history of the world. And yet we have the world's reserve currency, and we're a country that's 140 trillion in the hole with nothing behind it any longer. And the more and more and more that we keep interest rates low, it only incentivizes people to go further into debt. It's a vicious loop, a reinforcing loop. At some point, Mother Nature has to cleanse, has to reset, has to come in and let interest rates find their place, not by design of the Fed, but by design of the market. The market has to say where interest rates should be. And we are, in real terms, negative in interest rates, and with the largest debt ever accumulated in human history. So what happens when interest rates normalize? It's going to be a spiritual experience. And this is why we own gold and silver, Alex, because in times of uncertainty, in times of uprising, in times of chaos, in frightening times like this, in times where you have governments around the world inflating and debasing, and at the same time, Alex, the governments around the world, let's not forget, reclassified gold as the world's only other tier 1 asset, reserve asset. They have been massively accumulating gold and silver, both just from the market. We talk central banks, but also the commercial banks pulling it off of COMEX and the sovereign wealth funds. Huge deliveries, as many deliveries in gold in last year, as we saw in roughly 5 years previously combined. More gold delivered last year than the Bank of India, than the Bank of Japan, than the Bank of the Netherlands. You're talking more gold deliveries than central banks hold to sovereign wealth funds last year off of COMEX, a vehicle that was never designed to be a delivery mechanism. You see gold reclassified as tier 1, and the wealthiest people in the world are accumulating the crap out of it, and silver. So you're seeing the wealthy prepare and get wealthier, and you're seeing the poor suffer and revolt. This is why they pulled Queen or Marie Antoinette out of her incredible Palace of Versailles that I toured one time, and beheaded her, because that's what revolutions are based upon. And you have a wealthy class where you have 2 or 3 people like Zuckerberg and Gates and what's his name, Elon Musk, and the guy from Amazon, Bezos. They have more money than 50% of all the people in the United States combined. So
Yeah.
when you have that kind of dichotomy, that kind of separation between people who got nothing and people who have everything, bad things happen. And that's what you're seeing.
Yeah, I have to agree. It's pretty amazing how big the wealth gap has grown. It's actually bigger than during the French Revolution. I don't even think the noblemen own that much of everything like they do now. But
Right?
yeah, so it seems like, I don't know, in Minneapolis and other places in the United States, it almost seems like this rioting was allowed to go on. I don't know if I'm correct in that assessment.
Yeah, it was. There's no question. I mean, how do you let a police station get burned down with Molotov cocktails and people dancing around like wild animals on national TV, on CNN, on Fox for hours, and you don't do anything about it? What does that say, just on a metaphorical level? What does it say when your police station is burned to the ground? Not good, and frightening. And I don't know, Alex. I think that these are times. The Chinese have a curse: may you live in interesting times. And these are anything but dull and complacent. And 2020 showed us all we need to prepare, not just with gold and silver. You have to have food and water and protection for your family. I think people need to own a gun, even if you hate guns. Criminals own guns, and if the police aren't going to be there to help you, you need to be able to protect your family. You need to learn gun training. You need to have supplies. Preparation is important, and in a time of great uncertainty like this, why not? These are things that I think people need to do and confront the reality of the situation that we are in. And like Gerald Celente says, when people lose everything, they lose it. And that's what you're seeing in places like Haiti and Cuba and South Africa right now. And it's very sad and scary. But you know what? We're not too far off from seeing that in the big cities here in the United States either.
Yeah, I have to agree, because we're starting to see it. It might not be as bad as South Africa, but it's getting there, like you're saying. So, do you think, these are just basically, divide and conquer? It seems like they always want to divide the American population into 2 factions. Usually not anymore, but 2 factions. Do you think it's just a way to keep, the people fighting? So, the people who have money can, basically take over everything, every last small business. It was kind of strange, with everything that went on, during lockdown, for instance. Just saying that really quick, because they had the Walmarts open where hundreds of people went in, and then they didn't have the little restaurants open, and then they all went out of business, which was pretty sad for our small town. It was kind of, I don't know, just killed it, I guess.
Don't take this the wrong way, but for a 17-year-old kid, you're pretty damn smart, and I'm not trying to be condescending. You have great intuition and you ask good questions, and I'm really happy to be associated with you, Alex. And I think divide and conquer certainly is right out of right out of a manifesto, communist manifesto, where that is a good way to certainly destabilize, no question about it. And if you look around, there is great divisiveness. On July 4th, you had Maxine Waters standing up there, and instead of talking about what this, the birthday of our country and what the country stood for, and the foundation of it, um, she just did nothing but spew divisiveness and hatred and venom. And when it's coming from our politicians, it becomes even more frightening. And yeah, there is a great separation, and there's a separation in race and in economic class, and it's blue versus red and black versus white, and the whole thing stinks. And it never was this way. And it's not good. It's frightening. You know, in case in point, where George Floyd was killed, there are signs there telling white people how to behave. Now, does that really need to be said? I don't think it does. And all that does is create more divisiveness and less unity and less harmony. We're all Americans. Skin color should mean nothing. Race should mean nothing. Ethnicity should mean nothing. Gender should mean nothing. You should be based upon, on your actions. You should be looked upon based upon your actions and your merits and what you do good for society, and nothing else. So I don't need to stand on my soapbox. I'm not trying to. I'm just simply saying that there is great divisiveness. Never in my lifetime, I'm 50, I've never seen divisiveness like this, where you can't even go to Thanksgiving dinner if you have relatives who, one were Trump supporters and one are Biden supporters, and the conversation comes up and there are fist fights going on instead of a normal conversation over a dinner table that benefits everyone with enhanced perspective on viewpoints. Instead, it's divisiveness. It's bad, and this is emblematic of a lot of the things that we're seeing around the country. In South Africa, a lot of it had to do with the jailing of a former president. Divisiveness here again, and political divisiveness, and it's not getting better anytime soon, and nor here in the United States.
Yeah, so it definitely seems like one of the big things people can do, to protect their wealth, like you've been saying, is, gold and silver, because at least that will keep its value. Paper is just paper. In a disaster, who wants paper? It becomes as good as toilet paper. So I
Well,
definitely,
I would like to say one thing, and that's true, but I think if the shit hits the fan, cash will be king for a little bit of time. And so it's not a bad idea to have, a few weeks or a month's worth of cash. Small bills preferred, 5s, 10s, 20s, and keep it on hand. Cash will be king at first, but it should not compose the majority of your savings, and especially at a period of time where you're getting next to nothing in the banks, and inflation is running at 5% by their own standards, which is wrong. When money creation is running at over 25% year over year, it's double digits for sure. And so the banks don't deserve to have the majority of your money. And when you look around you, where else do you put it? Where there's a modicum of value and safety. And, there are very few places that aren't either at unjustifiably all-time highs, or just too much risk associated with it. And I think in both cases, look, gold and silver are the only assets that are not simultaneously someone else's liability. There is no counterparty risk when you hold gold and silver, if you store it the right way, as we talked about earlier. And it's wealth. It's been wealth since the beginning of time. And the biggest money in the world, Alex, has been accumulating it since 2017. I could show you very eloquently and in a timeline how this has happened. And in fact, I just did next week, I can show it to you if you want on a
yeah, that'll be
PowerPoint.
great.
I'll show you my screen. And we can go through it. In fact, that'll be a good topic. We can go through how from 2017 to where we are today, the biggest money in the world is de-dollarizing. And I have a timeline that I have created on a PowerPoint to show you just that. We'll do that next week. But I think the bottom line is that the biggest money is always ahead of the curve. And they have been taking great lengths to de-dollarize and to slowly accumulate real assets. And I don't think the exodus from dollars has really even begun yet. When that happens, and you see a massive dollar devaluation as people around the world sell dollars, you'll understand what inflation is. You'll understand why to own gold and silver. You'll understand what rioting and social unrest is. These are all things that I don't think we've seen the end of yet, quite to the contrary.
Yeah,
I don't mean to sound like a doom and gloomer. I don't. But there's a fine line between pessimism and reality. And these uprisings are happening with greater frequency all around the world. And there is a common thread to it. And it is the fact that people can't make ends meet. And that's not a good thing. Again, when people lose everything, they lose it. And that's what's happening.
yeah, I agree. But there's a good side to the coin, like you're saying. At least we can prepare, at least protect our wealth with gold. So I did want to ask you, Andy, for the viewers, did you have a special on gold and silver this week?
Yeah, and I want your listeners to email me directly at Andy@MilesFranklin with any questions. We don't do online sales yet. We are building a new site that will allow it by the end of the year or sooner. Probably much sooner. But email me and Andy@MilesFranklin, first and foremost, with any questions. Secondly, with the Free American Press in the subject line. Thirdly, I'll make sure they get the best price in the United States. And lastly, right now we are running a special on the South African Krugerrand 2021 or the UK Britannia 2021, both for $4.39 over the price of silver. That'll be the lowest price in the country, as far as I can tell. I will offer that for at least the next week until we meet again. Only if your listeners email me at Andy@MilesFranklin. We've never had a customer complaint. We're one of only 27 US Mint authorized resellers in the world. We're fully licensed and bonded in a federally non-regulated industry. And I just appreciate the heck out of who you are as a young man. And, I wasn't too far behind you at 19 years old, starting in this industry. I've been doing this 31 years. And I admire a young man like yourself, or a woman, if there are any out there, who are young and aspiring to the truth and looking for ways to protect themselves. And this is why I underscore that this is not about making money, although you, I think, could very well make an awful lot of money with gold and silver. But the old adage, be careful what you wish for, because $100 silver and $4,000 gold, what does that portray for the value of the dollar? Not quite sure. Probably not real great. But look, gold and silver are wealth. Everything else is just credit. You know who said that?
JP Morgan.
Very good. That is correct. JP Morgan said that. And if you look at the root of a lot of the issues these days, JP Morgan, not the man, but the bank, seems to be not too far away from the epicenter of it. But you know what JP Morgan has done? They've amassed the largest supply of gold and silver privately held the world has ever seen, north of 1 billion ounces of silver, 10 times what the Hunt brothers tried to buy, and over 30 million ounces of gold. Do they see something that the rest of us don't? Do the central banks, who have been copiously accumulating it since 2017, and now the hedge funds and the sovereign wealth funds and the family offices, do they see things we don't see? The fact that gold was reclassified as the world's only tier 1. Does the Bank of International Settlements see something we don't see? The fact that the that the International Monetary Fund, 190 countries from around the world want a new Bretton Woods. That's a new dollar system. Do they see something we don't see? The biggest money in the world is preparing, and the rioting that you are seeing is only the beginning, as things get worse and worse and worse until people just beg for a new system. And they come in on like a white knight and usher in a new reset, a new system. And I've never been actually more convinced that something like that could happen. I mean, it's appearing more and more likely every day.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with you, Andy, and I'd like to thank you for being on the show today. And I look forward to talking to you next Friday.
Absolutely. And again, I really, really would implore your listeners who want to get exposure to metals. I own the company. Buck stops with me. Send me an email, my personal email, Andy at Miles Franklin. Mention the Free American Press. I'll send you an inventory of what we have. I'll personally answer all your questions, and I'll make sure you get the best price in North America. Alex, keep doing what you're doing, buddy. Um, you are an inspiration to an old guy like me who wondered if young guys like you would ever embrace this stuff, and keep doing what you're doing. You're a beacon of light, and hopefully you can get more young people and old to realize that having all your money, well, let me say it another way, to realize that, not to realize how much gold and silver should I own or think about that, but what exposure do you want to a currency that's $140 trillion in the hole at the lowest interest rates in human history, before things really get bad, before Mother Nature takes hold of the market, before interest rates go straight up, before the dollar collapses, before there are big problems like they're seeing in other parts of the world. Here, prepare and protect, not just with precious metals, food, water, home protection, plan B, whatever it may be, bug out bag, I don't care. Spend a little time preparing, and you know, they didn't build enough life rafts on the Titanic because it could never sink.
Right.
You know, the best laid plans need to be reevaluated once in a while, Alex. So this isn't about being doom and gloom. This is about realizing that these are times that require a little bit of thought and preparation. And you know what? Hopefully you never need to use your gold and silver for an emergency. Maybe use it for an opportunity. And if you never use it, you give it to a future generation or to a charity, and all's well that ends well. So, Alex, I wish you, my friend, a great weekend. Keep doing what you're doing. You have my admiration and respect, and I'm really proud to be associated with a fine young man like you. And out of that appreciation, anyone that emails me personally over the next week for either the Krugerrand or the Britannia 2021 silver coins will get the best price in the country. You have my promise.
Okay, well that sounds great, Andy. And yeah, thank you for the viewers who are watching the show today. And basically we all saw what happened to the Venezuelan Bolivar. And the good thing is that we know how to prepare. So basically, as a final note, everyone, anything the government tells you to do the opposite, because it's usually the best. Okay, well, thank you all for watching. God bless.
Bless.